She pulled up to the restaurant parking lot in an old, slightly rusted hatchback, the kind of car most people overlook or joke about. A few people standing nearby couldn't help but chuckle. "How is she still driving that thing?" One whispered. Another smirked. "Must be broke." They didn't know her story, not even close. They only saw the faded paint and the squeaky brakes. But what they didn't see was where that little budget car had taken her, and what was waiting behind the doors of her garage. It wasn't the first time she'd been judged for how she looked or what she drove. Friends had questioned her choices, wondering why she wouldn't just finance a newer, flashier car like everyone else. But she had a different plan, a quiet plan. While others were racking up car payments, she was tracking her spending, skipping unnecessary expenses, and sticking to a budget most wouldn't dare to follow. Every penny she saved from avoiding that new car smell went somewhere important, somewhere bigger. Behind her calm smile and humble lifestyle was a mindset of discipline and vision. She didn't need to prove anything to anyone, but the whispers, the sideways glances, and the laughter, it all built up, and eventually, the moment came when those same people who once laughed were left speechless. Because one weekend, she invited a few of them over. They followed her back home, still joking on the way. But as she pressed a button and the garage doors slowly rolled up, their jaws dropped. They expected a dusty old storage space, maybe some tools and boxes. What they saw instead changed everything. She stood there quiet, watching their faces shift from amusement to shock. Years of planning and sacrifice had led to this very moment. What sat inside that garage? Let's just say it wasn't what anyone expected from someone driving a beat-up hatchback. The laughter had stopped. The silence said it all. But what was behind those garage doors? And how did she manage to go from budget living to something no one saw coming? That's where this story really begins. Everyone stood frozen, eyes locked on what they saw inside her garage. But before we get to that part, let's go back a little, to where it all started. Her name was Sarah, just a regular girl from a small town, working a normal 9-to-5 job, living on a paycheck that barely stretched to the end of the month. Like most people, she had dreams, big ones, but she also had bills, student loans, and a bank account that often dipped below zero. The pressure to keep up with everyone else was real. Fancy clothes, new phones, luxury cars, all the things social media says you should have by your 20s. But Sarah saw things differently. She remembered watching her parents struggle with money, maxed out credit cards, missed mortgage payments, constant stress. She promised herself she wouldn't repeat that cycle. So while her friends were upgrading to new SUVs and taking vacations on credit, Sarah chose the hard road. She drove her old car, skipped takeout meals, and lived in a modest apartment with second-hand furniture. To most people, it looked like she was barely getting by. But quietly, she was doing something most of them weren't. She was learning. Late nights with finance books, budgeting apps, side hustles on weekends, watching every dollar like it mattered. Because to her, it did. She started investing small amounts, bought a few stocks, flipped some furniture online, and even learned how to resell items from garage sales for profit. It wasn't flashy, but it was consistent. Every month she put more away. Every year her knowledge and confidence grew. Still, no one really noticed. Even the people closest to her didn't understand what she was doing. They'd tease her about her car, question her choices, wonder if she was missing out. But Sarah had something most of them didn't: patience and a plan. And she knew that someday, all the small, quiet decisions would add up to something bigger. The mystery, though, remained. What was so shocking about that garage? What had she built behind those closed doors, all while keeping up her low-key lifestyle? That moment, the one where her friends went silent, didn't happen by chance. It was years in the making. But the real surprise? It wasn't just what she owned. It was what she knew, and the most unbelievable part of her journey hadn't even been revealed yet. Inside that garage, under the soft glow of ceiling lights, sat not just one, but 3 high-end luxury vehicles. Polished to perfection, their sleek bodies reflected the stunned faces of everyone standing at the entrance. A Tesla Model S, a matte black Porsche, and a vintage Mustang that looked like it had just rolled off the showroom floor. Nobody said a word. The same people who once laughed at her budget car now couldn't even meet her eyes. But the cars were just the surface. What they didn't know was that behind those cars, behind a sliding panel, was something even more unexpected. An office, not a typical home office with a desk and laptop, but a setup that looked more like a trading room. Monitors lined the wall, sticky notes with scribbled numbers, charts, and plans. It wasn't a garage. It was the heart of an operation she had, built from scratch. The real conflict, though, wasn't about proving anyone wrong. Sarah had spent years balancing on a tightrope, trying to build wealth without letting anyone know. She knew how people judged success. If she showed even a glimpse of what she was doing too early, they'd either try to ride her wave or tear her down. So, she stayed quiet, kept her head low, and let the budget car be the cover for her quiet empire. But not everyone was clueless. One of her oldest friends, Mia, had noticed the changes. Sarah had started asking very specific questions about tax, loopholes, and real estate. She stopped going out altogether but seemed more focused and at peace. Mia had always supported her, but recently started feeling distant. Like Sarah was hiding something, or someone. And she was right. There were deals Sarah was making behind closed doors, partnerships, cash offers on foreclosed homes, and even a rental property empire under a separate name. All while still clocking in at her day job like nothing had changed. Then there was Ben, a former colleague who once mocked Sarah for being too frugal. He'd laughed when she packed her lunch every day. But now, seeing her garage, his laughter was gone. What hurt him most wasn't jealousy, it was regret. Years ago, Sarah had offered to show him how she budgeted and invested. He brushed her off. Now he couldn't stop wondering, what if he had listened? But Sarah's journey wasn't without risks. She had secrets. Partnerships with people who didn't like to lose. Deals that were about to go south. And choices she made that might come back to haunt her. Because success, especially quiet success, often comes with a cost. And hers was just about to be revealed. The silence in the garage stretched longer than anyone expected. Sarah could feel the weight of every glance, every question no one was brave enough to ask. The shine of the luxury cars wasn't even the most shocking part anymore. It was the realization that they'd never really known her at all. Her quiet evenings, her skipped outings, the worn-out hatchback, none of it had been by accident. Every detail had been part of a much bigger plan. But the truth was, not everything had gone according to that plan. As her friends stood there, still trying to process what they were seeing, Sarah's mind wasn't even on them. It was on the call she'd gotten earlier that day, the one she hadn't told anyone about. A real estate deal she had been working on for almost a year was now in serious trouble. One of her partners, a silent investor with deep pockets and a short temper, had backed out at the last minute. The deal involved a rundown apartment complex she'd planned to renovate and flip for a huge profit. But without that funding, everything could collapse. She'd already committed to contracts, spent thousands on permits, and tied up most of her savings. And then there was another issue. Someone had been digging. A week ago, she received a message from an unknown number. No name, just a screenshot of her business LLC filings, and a short note. People are watching. Be careful. At first, she ignored it. But now, with the deal falling apart and questions piling up, it felt like something bigger was brewing. Someone knew more than they should. And if certain connections she had tried to keep hidden came to light, everything she'd built could come crashing down. Meanwhile, Mia, still watching. From the back of the group, felt a strange mix of pride and worry. She had always believed in Sarah, but this was more than she ever imagined. She could see something in Sarah's face that the others couldn't. Not pride, not arrogance, but pressure, like someone carrying too much for too long. Ben, on the other hand, wasn't just curious anymore. He was suspicious. How had she done all of this without anyone noticing? And why was she still pretending to be someone she wasn't? The way he saw it, people don't hide wealth like this unless they have a reason. Sarah took a deep breath. She had shown them the surface, just enough to make them question everything. But what they didn't know was that the real storm hadn't even hit yet, and when it did, some secrets might not stay buried. Just as Sarah was about to close the garage door, trying to regain control of the moment, her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen. Same unknown number, same cold tone. This time the message was shorter, but far more chilling. "We warned you. The garage isn't the only thing people are watching." Her stomach dropped. She quickly pocketed the phone, hoping no one noticed the shift in her expression. But Mia did, back in the house, while everyone still murmured in disbelief over the cars and what they might mean. Sarah slipped into her office behind the garage. She locked the door, sat at her desk, and pulled up her encrypted files. Over the past few years, she had funneled money through a complex system of small business accounts, all legal but not easy to trace. Her online store, the digital marketing, side hustle, the e-book sales, they were all part of her income stream. But the apartment deal? That had required something riskier. She'd partnered with someone she barely knew, someone with connections and influence, but a reputation that made her uneasy from day one. And now it seemed that decision was catching up with her. What she didn't know was that Ben, still lingering outside, had quietly taken photos of her luxury vehicles. He had been passed over for a promotion recently, and deep down, he blamed Sarah. Seeing all this wealth hidden behind her simple life made him angry. But more than that, it made him curious. He started doing some digging of his own, and within hours, he would find one of her LLCs registered in a different state, under a name that led to an address linked to another mystery investor, someone who had once been investigated for tax fraud. Inside, Sarah's screen flashed with a new alert. One of her accounts had been flagged for unusual activity. It wasn't supposed to happen, not with all the safeguards she'd put in place. But it had. Someone was either inside her system or close to breaking through. The risk wasn't just financial anymore. It was personal. She had spent years building something she thought was bulletproof, living frugally, making smart money moves, avoiding debt, and investing in hidden properties, all under the radar. But now, everything was unraveling at once. The people she tried to protect herself from were closer than ever, and one of them might be standing in her driveway. Sarah's hands hovered over the keyboard, her heart racing. She knew the signs. Someone was inside her financial system, and if they got access to the wrong files, everything could fall apart. The apartment complex deal, her network of side hustles, the private investors she had carefully kept off, the books. It could all be exposed. She checked her security logs again. One IP address kept popping up. Familiar, local, and then it hit her. Ben. She rushed to the garage window and scanned the driveway. His car was still there. He hadn't left with the others. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a picture. Not of her garage, not of her accounts, but of her living room, taken from the outside, through the window. The message below it read, "Let's talk, before someone else does." Sarah didn't wait. She walked straight back through the garage, past the stunned group, and out into the street where Ben was pretending to scroll through his phone. He looked up, a little too calm, a smug half-smile on his face. "You're smarter than I thought," he said. "But you're not untouchable." "What do you want?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. He held up his phone. I know about the investor, the accounts, the flagged transaction, all of it. But I'm not here to ruin you. I'm here to make you a deal. A few seconds passed before she realized the full weight of what he was saying. He didn't want to expose her. He wanted in. Ben had lost everything, his promotion, his savings, even his confidence, and now, seeing what Sarah had built, he wanted a piece of it. He offered silence in exchange for partnership. But Sarah wasn't naive. Letting him in meant giving up control and possibly letting someone reckless into something she'd built with so much care. She told him she'd think about it, knowing full well she never would. That night, she pulled all her files offline, closed the apartment, deal without the original investor, and reported the suspicious activity anonymously, erasing any ties to her name. She'd learned long ago that money isn't the real power, information is. And she still had the upper hand. But just when she thought things were finally under control, a letter arrived at her door. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It read, Ben wasn't the only one watching, and beneath it, a photo of her in that same garage, taken weeks ago. Sarah stared at the photo for a long time. It wasn't just a picture, it was a warning. Someone had been watching her long before she showed the garage to anyone. The timing, the angle, the shadows. It was clear the person had access, not just to her property, but to her life. She wasn't sure if it was connected to Ben or if someone else, maybe the old investor she dropped or a buyer she'd beaten to a deal, had started digging. Either way, it reminded her of something she'd almost forgotten. When you play the game quietly, some people get loud behind your back. Still, she wasn't the kind of person to run. Over the next few days, she tightened her security systems, moved her digital assets to cold storage, and transferred several properties into a new trust under a legal team she had already put in place for this kind of emergency. She made sure every loose end was accounted for, every file, every name, every payment traced, locked, and safe. She even installed extra surveillance around the house, not just for protection, but as a message. She wasn't afraid anymore. Mia, noticing the change, finally sat down with her and asked for the full story. This time, Sarah told her everything. The years of saving, the side hustles, the investing strategies, even the risks she took that nearly backfired. Mia didn't judge. She listened. And when Sarah finished, Mia said something that stuck with her. You didn't do this to prove anyone wrong. You did it to prove yourself right. She was right. Ben never contacted her again. He knew he had crossed a line, and Sarah's quiet strength told him she wouldn't hesitate to protect what she built. As for the photo in the letter, no one ever claimed it. But in a way, it didn't matter. It served as the final lesson Sarah needed. No matter how private your life is, success always draws attention. And not all of it is good. But here's the truth. The same old car still sat in her driveway. She kept it as a reminder, not just of where she started, but of what really matters. It wasn't the luxury cars or the wealth behind the garage that defined her. It was the mindset, the discipline. The choice to live below her means while building something above expectations. And that's what no one saw coming.